My son, an alcoholic, took the only copy of the videotape of my husband's wedding during a drunken argument and broke it into pieces. He stood there with that mean little smirk he gets when the bottle's talking louder than he is, and snapped the tape right in front of me. By the time the cops were done and the cuffs were on, the only thing left of that day was a pile of black ribbon on my kitchen floor. Now he's staring down a full year in a mandatory rehabilitation center, and I'm the one who put him there. I'm 60 years old, and I live in a modest little ranch house in a suburb outside Indianapolis. Single story, beige siding, 3 bedrooms, one of those HOA neighborhoods with speed bumps and a newsletter nobody reads. I've lived there for 22 years. Long enough to watch the maple in the front yard grow from a skinny stick into a real tree, and long enough to bury one husband and lose the son I raised to a bottle. The videotape he broke was from my second wedding. His name was Mark, and he was the kind of man I didn't know actually existed until he walked into my life. Patient, funny, the kind who'd fix your sink and then sit down and ask how your day really was. We got married in the spring of 1999 in a small church with yellowing hymnals and a fellowship hall that smelled like coffee and powdered creamer. My sister's old camcorder sat on a tripod in the back, whirring along on a single VHS tape. That was it. No professional photographer, no backup recording, just that cheap tape capturing crooked bouquets, nervous vows, and the moment Mark's voice broke when he promised to take care of me and my son. I always meant to get it digitized. Every time I'd see one of those, "We'll transfer your home movies to DVD" signs at Walmart, I'd tell myself, next paycheck, next month, when things calm down. Things never calmed down. Then Mark got sick. Pancreatic cancer comes like a thief. By the time we knew what it was, we were already counting in months instead of years. He died 6 years ago. In a hospice bed we squeezed into our bedroom so he could still see his maples outside the window. That VHS tape became something holy to me. I kept it in a little fireproof lockbox in the back of my closet, nestled between old tax returns and the title to the house, the label written in my own handwriting, Wedding 4/17/99, me and Mark. My son, Tyler, knew exactly how much it meant to me. Tyler is 34. He was 12 when I married Mark, lanky and quiet, with shoulders already starting to curl in like he was bracing for impact. His father, my first husband, was a drinker too. There's a pattern there, I know. His dad, Ray, was charming as hell and dangerous in slow motion. He never hit me, never left a bruise, but he had a talent for cutting me down with a look and disappearing for days just to clear his head, always at the bottom of a bottle somewhere. He was gone for good by the time Tyler was 11. DUI, no insurance, lost his license, then lost interest in pretending to be a dad. He wandered off to another state and another woman and another life. I stopped keeping track when the child support check stopped. So when Mark showed up, it was like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. He took Tyler camping, taught him how to change a tire and how to grill a steak without turning it into charcoal. He went to school concerts and sat through painfully bad clarinet solos. He showed up. But addiction is like rust on a car frame. You don't see how bad it is until something important falls off. Tyler started drinking young. I found his first empty beer bottles in his room when he was 16. He said they belonged to a friend. I wanted to believe him because the alternative meant looking at the past straight in the face and admitting it was repeating. By 19, he was dropping out of his second community college. By 21, I knew exactly what kind of drunk he was. He wasn't the loud bar fight kind. He was the slow, slippery kind, the one who lied as easily as breathing, who looked you in the eyes and swore he was sober while he smelled like a brewery, the one who borrowed money and never remembered the conversation later. Over the last decade, I've paid for his first DUI, the lawyer for his second DUI, the security deposit on his first apartment, the replacement phone he lost that later showed up wedged between his couch cushions, the tow fees for a car he parked on the wrong side of the street and never went back for. Every time there were promises. I get it now, Mom. Last time. I swear. I'm going to AA again.
My buddy's picking me up. I just need help until my next paycheck. I believed him longer than I should have. Maybe because I still heard that 12-year-old boy in his voice when he called me Mom instead of Ma or Pam, like he did when he was trying to distance himself from me. Then Mark died, and everything went from bad to worse. Grief turned my house into a mausoleum. I went through the motions. I worked reception at a small insurance office. I paid the bills. I swept floors that didn't look dirty just to have something to do. I made single servings of dinner and left his recliner exactly where it was. Tyler moved back in for a few weeks to help me out. We both lied about why he was there. I knew he'd been kicked out of his last roommate situation, and he knew I didn't have it in me to say no to my own son while I was still sleeping in Mark's old t-shirts. We set ground rules. No drinking in the house. He'd pay a small amount of rent once he got a job. He'd help with chores. He agreed to all of it. Enthusiastically. Sincerely. Or at least it sounded that way. Within a month, beer cans were showing up in the outside trash. Within 2, I was finding vodka bottles tucked behind the washing machine, in the linen closet, under the kitchen sink. At first, I let little things slide. I pretended I didn't see. I told myself, he's grieving too. We snapped at each other over stupid things. Crumbs in the sink, towels left on the floor, dishes abandoned in the living room. But the first time I saw the look on his face when he'd had just a few was when I realized I wasn't living with my son anymore. I was living with whatever his addiction turned him into. It was a little after Mark's first death anniversary. I'd picked up a cake from Kroger Bakery and lit a candle at the kitchen table. Just me and the photo of Mark in his suit. The taped-up VHS sat nearby, like a quiet promise I still wasn't ready to play. Tyler came in late, already buzzed, eyes glassy and movements a half-second delayed. "You having a party?" he said, looking at the cake. "It's for your stepdad," I said quietly. "It's been a year today." He rolled his eyes. "He's not my stepdad anymore, Mom. He's dead." That was the first time I felt something harden in me. Not break, exactly, just set. "We don't talk about him like that," I said. "Not in this house." He shrugged, grabbed a fork, and scooped a chunk of frosting right off the side of the cake. "Relax. He's not going to complain." I didn't kick him out that night. I wish I had. Instead, I did what so many mothers of addicts do. I folded up my boundaries and shoved them in the back of the drawer, right next to that wedding tape. I started going to Al-Anon because my sister got tired of listening to me cry on the phone about how I just don't know what to do anymore. Those meetings, some nights they were the only thing that kept me from packing up Tyler's stuff in garbage bags and leaving it out on the curb like an eviction notice. I learned phrases like enabling and detaching with love. I heard other women, some older than me, some younger, talk about their sons and daughters and husbands slowly disappearing into their addictions. The stories all sounded different and exactly the same. A turning point came when an older lady named Janet looked me dead in the eye and said, "You are not obligated to go down with his ship." Still, turning advice into action is harder than nodding along in a church basement over lukewarm coffee. So I started small. I stopped giving Tyler cash. "You need money? I'll pay the electric bill directly. You're hungry? I'll buy groceries, not fast food. You need a ride? I'll take you to work, not the bar." He acted like I'd betrayed him. The sweet, sad, apologetic drunk morphed into someone sharper, crueler. "Why are you being like this?" he'd sneer. "You know I'm trying. Don't you trust me? If Dad was around, he'd help me." He meant Ray, who hadn't sent a Christmas card in 15 years. "Mark isn't here to tell you what to do anymore, so you're just doing whatever those meeting people say." I kept going to meetings. I kept refusing to hand over cash. He got a job at a warehouse, lost it for attendance issues. got hired at a call center, quit after 3 weeks because the manager was out for him. It was always someone else's fault. But the real cliff we were walking towards was money.
I make enough to cover my bills and have a little left over. Not a lot of wiggle room. So when Tyler's car got booted for unpaid tickets I didn't know existed, he came storming into the house like the world had personally insulted him. It was late August when everything finally boiled over. Humid, sticky Midwest summer, air thick enough you could chew it. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a fan oscillating pointlessly in the corner, going over my budget. Payday was tomorrow, and I was trying to decide if I could afford to refill my blood pressure prescription and still get the leak under the sink fixed. Tyler burst in through the front door, letting it bang against the wall. "Those cops booted my car," he said without even a hello, making a beeline for the fridge. "You need to come down and pay to get it released." "Good evening to you too," I muttered, but my stomach already knew what was coming. He popped open a beer, at 2 in the afternoon, and leaned against the counter, exhaling annoyance like cigarette smoke. "I'm serious, Mom. I gotta get to work tomorrow. If I lose this job, it's on you." I took a steadying breath. "How much is it?" He shrugged. "Like 400? 500? I don't know. Just bring your card." "Tyler, I don't have that kind of money just lying around. You got retirement. That's for when I can't work anymore. You got the house. I'd like to keep it." His jaw clenched. "So you're just not going to help me?" "I have helped you," I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could. "I paid for your last tickets. I helped with the tow. I'm paying for your groceries while you get back on your feet. I can't keep doing it." He scoffed, shaking his head like I'd told a joke. "You can't or you won't." "Both," I said. "You knew those tickets were piling up. You got the notices." "That meal goes to you," he snapped. "You think I have time to read every envelope I get?" I stared at him. Yes, that's called being an adult. The temperature in the room went up 10 degrees without the thermostat moving. He took a swig of beer and pointed the bottle at me like an accusation. "You know what your problem is? You care more about your dead husband's money than your living son." There it was, the old resentment, raw and ugly. "This isn't about Mark," I said quietly. "Everything's about Mark with you," Tyler shouted, louder now. "You still got his stupid recliner, his stupid mugs, his stupid old man sweaters in the closet like a museum. You got that creepy little shrine to your wedding in the bedroom." I felt my heart misfire. "What did you say?" He smirked, realizing he'd hit something. "You know, the tape, the one you think I don't know about?" My mouth dried. The lock box was in my closet. I'd never told him what was inside, but he must have gone through it at some point. Not surprising. Alcoholics are professional snoops when they want something. "That tape is none of your business, and you have no right going through my things." He rolled his eyes. "Please, you act like it's the Holy Grail. It's just some grainy old VHS. You're obsessed." "I'm done talking about this," I said, standing up. My hands were shaking. "We're not paying the tickets. You'll have to work something out with the city. Maybe a payment plan." He slammed the beer bottle down on the counter so hard some spilt. "No, you're gonna fix this, Mom, like you always do." "I'm not your bailout anymore, Tyler." The silence after that sentence was heavier than any scream. For a moment, I thought he might cry. His eyes got glossy and his lower lip trembled like the little boy he used to be when he'd scraped his knee and come running to me. Then the moment passed. The bottle had him again. "Fine," he said, voice suddenly flat. "If you won't help me, I'll help myself." He pushed off the counter and stalked down the hall. I followed, dread pooling in my stomach. "Tyler, don't you dare go into my room." He swung my bedroom door open and went straight to the closet like he'd rehearsed it. Get out of my room, I snapped, the panic finally rising in my voice. Tyler, I am not kidding. He ignored me, shoving hangers aside. The sound of the lockbox scraping forward on the shelf made bile rise in my throat. He pulled it down and shook it. Where's the key? I'm not giving it to you. He looked at me then with a coldness I'd never seen before. I wasn't asking. He walked right past me, box in hand, to the kitchen. I followed him, heart pounding in my ears. Stop, Tyler! Put that down!
That has important documents in it. He grabbed a butter knife from the drawer and wedged it into the seam of the lockbox. The cheap little latch didn't stand a chance. One good shove and it popped open. Stop it, I cried, reaching for the box. He jerked it out of reach and dug inside, pushing aside envelopes and folders until his hand closed around the black plastic rectangle. There it is, he said softly, like he'd caught a mouse. He held the tape up between us, squinting at my handwriting on the label. Wedding, 4/17/99, me and Mark. Touching! I felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. Give it back, I said. My voice barely sounded like mine. You know what your problem is? He said again, almost conversational now. You live in the past. You love that dead guy more than you ever loved me. That is not true, I whispered. Really? He said. His eyes glittered with something ugly. Because when he was around, you had time for everything. PTA, school plays, summer camps. Once he died, you had nothing left for me. Just that stupid tape. I was grieving, I said. You were an adult by then, Tyler. You were living your own life. Yeah, a real success story, huh? He said bitterly. Maybe if you'd cared half as much about me as you do about this. He waved the tape in my face, then took a step back. Please, I said. I heard the crack in my own voice and hated it. Tyler, don't. That's all I have left of... You have me, he said, leaning into the cruelty now. But you don't want me unless I'm sober and perfect and exactly the son you wanted. Newsflash, Mom, I'm what you got, not Prince Charming on that tape. He held it out with both hands. For a second, I hoped, he was going to set it on the counter. Then, looking straight into my eyes, he bent the tape. There is a very specific sound a VHS makes when you snap it in half. It's a crack and a crunch and a little pop. Plastic and metal and memories breaking all at once. He did it slowly, like he was savoring it. No, I gasped, lurching forward. He snapped it completely, 2 jagged pieces suddenly dangling by a thin, curling ribbon of black tape. Then he twisted that too, until it tore, and the loose film spilled out like guts onto the floor. He dropped the broken halves onto the tiles, then stomped on them for good measure. Oops, he said. Guess now you'll have to live in the present. I stared at the ruined pieces, my chest tight and fluttery, my vision tunneled. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. Tyler, I said softly, dangerously calm, get out of my house. He snorted. Oh, now you're kicking me out because of a tape? Because of everything. He took a step toward me. Not a lunge, not a hit, but a looming, towering over kind of step. Intimidation as a reflex. He's taller than me, always has been. 6 foot something to my 5'4". He used to hug me with those arms. Now he used them like a threat. What are you gonna do? Call the cops on your own son? Something inside me finally clicked into place. Not breaking this time. Not hardening. Just aligning. Yes, I said. I am. We stared at each other. He must have seen something in my face because, for the first time that afternoon, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his expression. You're not serious, he scoffed, but it didn't land the same way. I walked around him slowly, careful not to brush against his arm, and picked up the cordless handset from its cradle on the counter. His eyes followed my hand. I dialed 911. He laughed. You're insane! 911, what is your emergency? The operator asked. I held Tyler's gaze as I spoke. My son is intoxicated and has just destroyed property and threatened me. I'm 60 years old, I live alone, and I'm afraid of him. I need officers sent to my address. His face went slack. Mom, hang up the phone. I didn't. The operator kept me talking, asking if there were weapons in the house. No. If anyone was injured, not physically. If he was still there, yes. He's yelling at you? She asked as he barked at me, give me the phone, in the background. Yes, I said. He's yelling. Stay on the line with me, she said. Officers are on their way. I backed myself into the far corner of the kitchen, the phone pressed to my ear like a shield. Tyler paced in front of me, running his hands through his hair, swearing under his breath, then louder.
You're really doing this? He demanded. You're really gonna call the cops and tell them what? I broke your tape? I stepped on your little shrine? You can't send me to jail for that. Sir, the dispatcher said loudly enough through the phone that he could hear, if you continue to approach her or threaten her, that will not go well for you when officers arrive. He blinked, thrown off by the disembodied voice. He backed up a step, then another. Unbelievable, he muttered. You're unbelievable. Oh, now I'm unbelievable? I shot back, the adrenaline finally loosening my tongue. You stole from me, lied to me, screamed at me, drank in my house after I asked you not to, and now you destroyed the last moving picture I had of my husband, and I'm the unbelievable one. He didn't answer. We waited. It doesn't take that long for cops to show up in our neighborhood. The HOA would have a fit if it did. When the squad car pulled up, I watched through the window as two officers stepped out, a male and a female, both with that tired, we've seen everything expression. Tyler looked at me one last time. Don't do this, he said. I thought about all the time I'd bailed him out, literally and figuratively. Every time I'd lied to myself about how this time might be different. Every slow erosion of my boundaries. I thought about Mark's voice cracking as he said "I do" all those years ago, captured forever on a tape that now lay in shards next to the kitchen chair where he used to sit and drink his morning coffee. I already did, I said. The female officer did most of the talking. She spoke to me first, pulling me aside while her partner spoke to Tyler in the living room. Can you tell me what happened today, ma'am? She asked gently. I told her about the car, about the money, about the argument, about the lockbox. I gestured to the floor. That tape was from my wedding to my late husband, I said, voice catching. It's all I had left of him, moving, talking. And my son knew that. He did this on purpose, and he was drinking. She nodded, eyes scanning the pieces, then my face. She noticed the way my hands trembled. Has he ever gotten physical with you? She asked gently. I hesitated. He's never hit me, I said truthfully, but he's blocked doorways, loomed, yelled in my face. I'm 60. He's a lot bigger than I am. I was scared. I heard her partner in the other room. Sir, have you been drinking today? Just a beer? How many is just? A couple. I'm fine. Does he live here? She asked. Yes, I said, then swallowing hard. But I don't want him to anymore. I want him out. I want a no contact order. Whatever I have to sign, I'll sign it. She looked me over for a long moment. Then she nodded again, slower this time. All right, she said. We can help you with that. They did a preliminary breathalyzer on Tyler. I heard him protesting, then blowing, then swearing when the numbers came up. Sir, you're over the legal limit. You've been drinking in a residence where you've been asked not to, and your mother has stated she's afraid of you. She's also saying you destroyed property that was sentimental value. Oh, so now I'm going to jail for breaking a tape? Tyler snapped. You're being placed under arrest for criminal mischief and intimidation. And because of your prior record, there's a chance this will be considered an enhanced charge. He froze. What prior record? You have 2 DUIs on file. We see everything when we run your information, sir. He shot me a look that should have set me on fire. You told them? They already knew. When they cuffed him, it was like watching a movie I'd seen before with a different ending. I'd seen him in cuffs once, years ago, after his second DUI. Back then, I'd cried and begged the booking officer to be gentle. I'd called every lawyer in the phone book until I found one who could work something out so my boy wouldn't have to spend more than a night in jail. This time, I watched in silence as they clicked the metal around his wrists. Do you want to press charges? The female officer asked me quietly, pen poised over her notepad. His head whipped around. Mom, don't.
I met his eyes. For once, I didn't look away. Yes, I said, I do. He started to panic then, really panic. This is ridiculous, he said, voice rising. You can't do this. I'm your son. I'm also a person, I replied, and I'm done being your punching bag. The words surprised me, not because I didn't mean them, but because I'd never said them out loud. They led him out to the cruiser, reading him his rights. He twisted in their grip to shout back at me, "You're gonna regret this, Mom! You hear me? You're gonna regret this! I'll tell them you're crazy, that you're making stuff up!" The door closed on the rest of his threat. The officers were gone a minute later, taillights disappearing around the corner. The house went quiet. I looked down at the wreckage on my kitchen floor. The VHS tape, my wedding day, my mark, lay in jagged pieces, black film tangled around chair legs like it was trying to hold on. I sank into the nearest chair and let myself finally cry. Quiet at first, then ugly, gasping sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for the tape. I cried for Mark. I cried for Tyler, for the little boy who used to climb into bed with us after a nightmare and insist on sleeping in the middle. I cried for myself most of all, for the woman who had spent so many years trying to mop up after everyone else's bad decisions that she didn't realize she was drowning in the mess. When there weren't any tears left, I picked up the pieces of the tape one by one and put them in a gallon-sized Ziploc bag. I don't know why. Maybe I needed a burial. Maybe I wasn't ready to let it go entirely, even ruined. Then I sat back down at the kitchen table, picked up a pen, and flipped over a piece of junk mail. On the back of a flyer for pizza coupons, I started writing down dates. DUI number 1, 2014. I paid the lawyer. DUI number 2, 2016. Judge warned him, next time, it'll be serious. Lost job at warehouse. Attendance. Moved back home. After Mark died. First time found bottles behind washer. Hospital visit. 2021. Alcohol poisoning. He said it was bad shrimp. It took 3 pages before I felt like I'd even scratched the surface. By the time I was done, my handwriting had gone from neat receptionist script to jagged and cramped. I stared at what I'd written and realized something very simple and very terrifying. If I backed down now, if I called the police station and told them, never mind, nothing would ever change. In fact, it would get worse. Because this time he hadn't just lied or stolen or yelled. This time he'd deliberately broken the last fragile piece of something sacred to me. He'd done it sober enough to aim that cruelty. I smoothed the pages out and stacked them. Then I went to my desk and pulled out a manila folder. Across the tab in black marker, I wrote, Tyler, incidents. I slid the pages inside. Then I turned on my old laptop, opened the browser, and typed 4 words into Google. Indiana court-ordered rehab. As the search results loaded, I felt the last remnants of my old, apologetic self step quietly out of the room. Enough was enough. If he wanted to treat me like the enemy, then I would stop pretending I wasn't willing to fight back. And I was going to make sure that this time the consequences stuck. I started with what I know best, paperwork. I may not be rich or powerful, but I've worked reception and admin my whole life. You give me a phone, a legal pad, and a pot of coffee, and I can build a paper trail that make the IRS proud. The first thing I did, once my hands stopped shaking, was call the non-emergency number and ask how to get a copy of my own 911 call and the incident report. Ma'am, it'll be available in a couple of days. You can request it at the records window at the station. So I wrote that down. Then I opened a new manila folder and labeled it 823 Incident, Tyler, Home. That made 2 Tyler folders in my drawer. I dug through my desk and pulled out old things I'd kept just in case. Letters from the DMV, printouts of past court dates from his DUIs, the hospital discharge instructions from his food poisoning that was, surprise, a blood alcohol level that could have killed him. I made a stack and highlighted dates and phrases the way the ladies at Al-Anon had taught me to do them. Then I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing like I was writing a report for a boss who hated vague language.
Incident at home, August 23rd, approximately 2:15 p.m. Son Tyler, 34, arrived intoxicated. Requested money for car boot and tickets, approximately $400 to $500. I declined, stating I cannot continue to pay his debts. I wrote down his exact words where I could remember them, especially the ugly ones. You love a dead man more than your own son.
Guess now you'll have to live in the present. What are you going to do, call the cops on your own son? I included how many beers I'd seen him drink that day, that I'd smelled vodka on his breath before, that there'd been previous incidents of him blocking doorways. I wrote until my fingers cramped, not because I thought the prosecutor was going to sit there reading every word like a novel, but because I needed a record. No more gaslighting. No more, "It wasn't that bad, Mom, you're exaggerating." No more me doubting my own memory when he rewrote events to suit himself. On the second page, I started a list. What I want. No contact order / protective order. Tyler out of my house permanently. Court-ordered long-term treatment, not just a weekend or a 28-day spin dry. I will not be responsible for his bail, court costs, or fines. I will not recant my statement. I underlined that last part 3 times. Then I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. The guilt crept in, right on schedule. What kind of mother writes essentially a mini legal brief about putting her son into the system? What kind of mother looks up Indiana felony intimidation penalty at 2 a.m? The kind with a broken tape and a plastic bag on her kitchen counter, apparently. The first call from jail came that night. The phone rang with an unfamiliar number and that little potential spam warning, and for the first time in my life, I answered it anyway. "Hello?" I said cautiously. A robotic voice came on. "You are receiving a collect call from an inmate at the Marion County Jail. To accept this call, press 1. I hung up. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. 5 minutes later, it rang again. Same number, same robotic voice. This time I pressed 1. There was a click, some echoing noise, the murmur of too many men in too small a space, and then his voice, tinny and sharp. "Mom? Mom, what the hell? Why'd you hang up?" "Hello, Tyler," I said. "You actually did it," he said. "You actually had them lock me up. Over a tape?" "You're not in jail over a tape," I said evenly. "You're in jail because you're a 34-year-old alcoholic with 2 prior DUIs who got drunk, threatened his 60-year-old mother, and destroyed her property. The tape just makes it easier for me not to feel bad about pressing charges." "You are so dramatic. I didn't threaten you. I was upset. You know I'm going through stuff." "You stepped toward me yelling while intoxicated. I told the dispatcher I was afraid of you. That's what they wrote down. That's what happens when you scare people." There was a short silence. I could picture him, mouth opening and closing like a fish, trying to find the angle, the right combination of words to pull old Mom back into orbit. "Look," he said finally, dropping his voice into that wheedling tone I know too well. "I messed up. I get it. But you can just tell them you overreacted. They'll drop it. They've got real criminals in here." "I'm not recanting." "You don't have to lie or anything," he rushed on. "Just tell them I'm not dangerous. Tell them you don't want to press charges. They already said if you change your mind." "You talked to the public defender already?" I cut in. He hesitated. "Yeah, he said it's mostly up to you, because it's, domestic or whatever." Domestic or whatever. Like this was a tiff about whose turn it was to do the dishes. "Tyler," I said, "I told the officers I was afraid of you. I meant it. I'm not taking that back because sober Tyler wishes drunk Tyler hadn't shown his whole self." Tyler, he groaned. Come on, don't do this. They're talking like jail time, like felony stuff. You want that on my record? You put the DUIs on your record. You got this charge on your record. I'm just not erasing the chalkboard for you anymore. I'll lose my job, he tried. You called in sick 2 days last week already. You were probably gonna lose it anyway. I'll have to go to some stupid program, he said, voice tightening. That's what they were saying, some court rehab thing. Those places are hellholes, Mom. Do you know what they're like? They take your phone. You're stuck with a bunch of losers. You mean a bunch of people like you? I asked quietly. People with addictions? He hissed out a breath. Wow, okay, now I'm a loser. I didn't say that, I corrected. I said you're an addict, and you are. You know you are? You've known for years. You just don't like it when other people say it out loud. Just tell them you don't want it to go that far, he pleaded. You always used to have my back.
What happened to that? I looked over at the Ziploc bag with my wedding day in pieces. I got tired, I said simply. I'm 60 years old, Tyler. I'm tired of paying for you to hurt yourself, and I'm tired of being collateral damage when you do. There was another silence. When he spoke again, his voice had lost almost all its charm. You're gonna regret this, he said quietly. You think they're going to make me better? They're just gonna piss me off. When I get out, I hung up. I didn't wait for the robot, didn't wait for this call has been disconnected, nothing. I just pressed the red button like I was turning off a light. Then I blocked the number. 2 minutes later, another potential spam call came in from a different number. I let it go to voicemail. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the table with my folders, my notes, and my shaking hands. This is what detaching with love looks like, I muttered to myself. This is it. It sucks. Then I went to bed and slept for 4 straight hours. That was more than I'd slept in a year. The legal system moves slowly for some people and very fast for others. For Tyler, it moved fast. Within 48 hours, there was an arraignment. I didn't go, but I checked the online docket. His name, my son's name, in black and white. State of Indiana versus full legal name. Charges: criminal mischief, property damage, intimidation, domestic, and public intoxication, because apparently he'd started mouthing off to the officer in the driveway before they even got him in the car. At the bottom, prior convictions on record, 2 OWI. The little note that said, victim requests no contact order, was one I'd put there with my own mouth and signature. The court date for the pretrial conference was set for a month out. In the meantime, there was the matter of where Tyler would be. He called again from some other number according to the voicemails I didn't answer. Mom, they set bail. It's not that much. You could put it on a card. Mom, this is messed up. You're really gonna leave me in here? Mom, please, it's me. Each voicemail hit a little softer than the last. Each one sat unheard until I deleted them in a batch. I went to my Al-Anon meeting and told them everything. Some of the women looked at me like I'd jumped off a cliff. Some looked at me like I'd finally stepped back from the edge. Janet, the older woman who'd told me I wasn't obligated to go down with his ship, squeezed my hand. You did something very hard, she said. I'm proud of you. I don't feel proud, I admitted. I feel mean, and relieved, and then mean again, and then relieved again. That's about right, she said. A week after the arrest, I took a personal day from work and went down to the prosecutor's office. You don't just stroll into those places. They've got metal detectors and plastic chairs, and a woman at the front desk who looks like she's seen every excuse in the book twice. I'm here about a case, I said, fumbling with my purse. My son's case. I'm the victim. I want to make sure someone hears me. They put me in touch with a victim advocate. Her name was Monique, and she looked about my daughter's age, if I had a daughter. We sat in a little windowless room with fluorescent lights too bright for the size of it. I handed over my manila folders like a student turning in a semester project. So, this is everything, I said, a little breathless. The DUIs, the hospital stuff, the tickets, and this is what happened that day. And this is what I'm asking for. I don't want him back in my house.
I do want some kind of treatment, not just a slap on the wrist. He's going to drink himself to death." She flipped through the pages, the highlighter, the dates. "You did your homework," she said softly. "I've done his homework for years. This time, it's mine." She smiled at that, then grew serious again. "Okay, so here's how this usually works. The prosecutor assigned to the case will read the report, possibly look at your notes, and decide how hard to push. A lot depends on the judge, his prior record, and whether he's willing to plead. I heard there's, court rehab, said, like instead of jail?" She nodded. "We do have a problem-solving court that deals with substance issues. Sometimes they offer long-term residential treatment as part of a plea. But it's not a magic fix. He'd have to qualify and accept it. Some people would rather do 90 days in jail than a year in treatment. Tyler would rather eat broken glass than be told what to do for a year, which is exactly why I want them to do it."
She chuckled once, despite herself. "I hear that a lot from moms." I leaned forward. "Listen," I said. "I know I can't force them. I know the judge and the prosecutor and whoever else wear the big kid pants here. But if anyone cares what I think, tell them I'm not asking for leniency. I'm asking for something that has a chance of keeping him alive. If he goes to jail and comes out in 30 days, he'll drink on the drive home." She nodded slowly. "Would you be willing to say that at sentencing, if it comes to that?" "Yes," I said. "I'll say it in front of God and everybody." She scribbled something down. "I'll flag your case," she said. "Make sure the prosecutor sees this file before the conference, and I'll call you when there are updates." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. As I was leaving, she stopped me. "Miss Miller?" I turned. "You're allowed to want justice and still love your son," she said. "Those things can both be true." I swallowed hard. "I'm starting to believe that," I said. If you've never had a loved one in jail, here's a free tip. The online inmate search will eat up your time if you let it. Every couple days, I'd pull up the site, type in his name, and stare at the little gray and white mugshot. Same brown eyes, same crooked nose he broke playing basketball in 9th grade, but dulled, swollen, tired. Charges, pending, it said. Bail, posted amount. Status, in custody. I'd close the tab and go fold laundry. At night, I'd lie in bed and think about him in a concrete cell with some stranger snoring 3 feet away, a metal toilet 6 inches from his head, and God knows what going on around him. I didn't like that. But I liked it better than picturing him unconscious behind the wheel of a car or dead in some parking lot with a paper bag in his hand. You pick your nightmares. About 2 weeks in, a letter arrived. The envelope had the jail's return address printed on it. Inside, 3 crumpled pages of my son's handwriting. It started strong. "Mom, I can't believe you're doing this. You've always overreacted, but this is crazy." Then it shifted into guilt. "I'm your son. I'm flesh and blood. How can you sleep at night knowing I'm in here because of you?" Then bargaining. "If you go to the prosecutor and say you don't want this, they'll probably go easier. I swear I'll go to meetings. I'll do outpatient. Just get me out." Then anger again. "Those meetings messed you up. You know that? They turned you against your own family. They brainwashed you." When I finished reading, I sat at the table with the letter in front of me and the Ziploc bag of tape fragments beside it, like a scale with 2 uneven sides. I pulled a notepad toward me and wrote a reply. "Tyler, I got your letter. I'm glad you're safe. I'm not changing my statement. I'm not talking to the prosecutor to ask for easier. I hope you use this time to think about why you're really here, beyond Mom called the cops. I love you. I will not be your doormat anymore. Mom." I stared at it. Then I put the letter in a drawer and did not send it. Not yet. Instead, I made another page for the Tyler folder. Jail letter, 9-1. Tone, manipulative, no accountability. Petty? Maybe. But again, I was building a record for the court, for myself. The pretrial conference came right on schedule. Monique called me the day before. "Just so you know," she said, "this probably won't be very dramatic. The prosecutor and public defender will talk in a side room, and your son might not even come into the courtroom for more than a minute. But if they're considering a treatment option, it'll start here. The prosecutor asked if you'd be there. So I took another day off work, put on my nicest black slacks and a burgundy blouse Mark had once said made my eyes look expensive, and drove downtown. Courtrooms look exactly the way they do on TV, except with more boredom and bad lighting. I sat in the back on a wooden bench that had carved initials from the 80s on the underside. Other cases went first. A guy in an orange jumpsuit for shoplifting, his mom crying quietly in the second row, a woman in leggings and a hoodie for possession, nodding frantically at her public defender every time the judge spoke, a man in a suit for some white-collar thing. He looked bored and irritated. Finally, State of Indiana versus Tyler. They brought him in from a side door, hands cuffed in front this time. He wore the standard issue jumpsuit, hair longer than I'd seen it in a while, face unshaven.
He scanned the room. When he saw me, something flickered across his face. Not relief, not exactly anger, something like disbelief. I gave him a small nod, not a smile, not a glare, just, yes, I'm here. Yes, this is happening. The prosecutor, a woman in her 40s with sensible shoes and tired eyes, leaned over the table to speak to the public defender. They whispered for a few minutes. The judge looked down at his docket. "Counselors," he said, "where are we?" The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, the state is prepared to offer a plea. Given the defendant's prior record and the victim's statement and request, we're recommending placement in the county's residential treatment program in lieu of a jail sentence with a term not to exceed 12 months, to be followed by probation and a no-contact order with the victim for the duration of probation. In exchange, the defendant would plead guilty to the intimidation charge. We'd drop the separate public intoxication charge and recommend a suspended sentence on the criminal mischief count." That was a lot of words. My brain distilled them into 1 year, treatment, no contact, no easy out. The public defender stood up. "Your Honor, I've discussed this with my client, and he's not ready to enter a plea today." Translation, he was hoping Mom would save him, and Mom didn't. The judge nodded. "Very well, we'll set this matter for another pre-trial in 3 weeks. In the meantime, bail stands." He banged his little hammer, and that was that. As they led Tyler out, he turned his head to look at me again. His lips formed words I couldn't hear, but I know how to read my own son's mouth. "Please," it said. My eyes burned. I didn't look away. I mouthed back, "Get help." He shook his head and disappeared through the side door. Over the next few weeks, the calls and letters kept coming. I listened to exactly one more voicemail, a quick one where he said, "They're talking a year, Mom. A year! That's insane. You can't seriously be okay with that." I deleted it. I finally mailed the short letter I'd written after adding one more sentence. "If you choose treatment, I will support that choice emotionally. I will not pay for anything. I will not pressure the court to make it shorter." He never responded to that letter. I found out later that he'd ripped it up and thrown it away in front of some of the other guys, making a show of how done he was with me. Alcoholics love an audience. But the public defender must have gotten through to him, or the weight of the charges did, or he realized nobody else was going to swoop in and save him, because at the next pretrial, things shifted. This time, when they called his case, he shuffled in looking smaller. The prosecutor said, "The plea offer stands, Your Honor." The judge said, "Mr. Millard, have you had time to consider it?" Tyler cleared his throat. "Yes, Your Honor. I'll take the deal." My heart did something strange, relief and dread all tangled together. This wasn't over, but a direction had been chosen, and for once, he hadn't taken the shortest, easiest path. The judge set a sentencing date 6 weeks out and ordered a pre-sentence investigation. "Mrs. Miller," Monique whispered to me, "this is where your input will matter.
They'll call you for the PSI, and you'll have a chance to give a victim impact statement at sentencing. Start thinking about what you want to say. I'd already started. Back home, I opened a new document. Title, Statement for Court, Final. It felt like writing a eulogy for a relationship that wasn't dead, but wasn't alive either. I wrote about the tape, yes, but I also wrote about the 12-year-old who'd clung to Mark's arm, the 15-year-old who'd once cried in my car because he was scared he'd turn out like his biological father. I wrote about the night I'd held his hand in the ER while they pumped fluids into him, and the way the doctor had said, "He's young, he'll bounce back." Like that made it okay. I wrote about waking up every time I heard a siren, checking my phone to see if it was him. About counting pills in my blood pressure bottle to see if I could skip a refill so I could pay his past due electric instead. I wrote about the lockbox and the way he'd pried it open. I wrote, he didn't just break a tape, he broke my sense of safety in my own home.
And then I wrote the part that felt the most like revenge and the least like it at the same time. I'm asking the court to give my son the structure and consequence that I have failed to provide. I am asking for long-term residential treatment because I believe it is the only realistic chance he has of getting sober and staying alive. I want a no-contact order during that time because I need space to heal from the emotional damage of years of addiction and manipulation. I finished with, I love my son. I am not asking for mercy from the consequences of his actions. I am asking that those consequences have a chance to mean something. When I was done, I printed 3 copies. One for the court, one for my folder, one for me to read over and over until I could say it without my voice shaking. Sentencing day. I remember what I wore. Black slacks again, but this time with a navy cardigan and Mark's old watch on my wrist. The one I'd kept in the back of the drawer. It needed a new battery, but I wore it anyway. It felt like armor. The courtroom was fuller this time. Apparently they stacked a bunch of sentencings on the same morning. When Tyler was brought in, he looked resigned. Still in the jumpsuit, still with the shackles, but the edgy defiance was mostly gone. He looked like a man who'd finally run out of road. The judge glanced at the PSI report, flipped a page, and then looked out at the room. "All right," he said. "Mr. Miller, you have pled guilty to the charge of intimidation with the understanding that the court will consider placement in the county's residential treatment program in lieu of executed jail time. I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation, including your prior convictions, and the victim's statement." He lifted a paper. "Mrs. Miller, would you like to address the court?" he asked, peering over his glasses. My legs felt like wet paper. I stood, anyway. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. I would. I walked up to the little podium. My hands shook as I adjusted the microphone. They always put those things too low. I unfolded my paper. But when I started speaking, I didn't have to look at it much. "Your Honor," I began, "my name is Pamela Miller. I'm the victim in this case, and I'm also the defendant's mother." A few people in the courtroom shifted in their seats. That combo always gets a reaction. "I want to be clear," I said, "that I did not call the police lightly. I have spent years trying to protect my son from the consequences of his drinking. I paid lawyers, I paid fines, I lied for him, I cleaned up after him. And every time I did that, I took a little bit of the weight off his actions. I made it easier for him to keep going the way he was going." I took a breath. "The incident that brought us here looks small on paper," I continued. "A broken tape? Some angry words? But that tape was from my wedding to my late husband.
It was the only moving image I had of his face, his voice. My son knew that, and he broke it in front of me to hurt me because I wouldn't give him money to solve a problem his own actions created. I heard a soft murmur behind me. The judge held up a hand for quiet. I am 60 years old. I live alone. My son is a large man. He was intoxicated. He loomed over me, yelling, and I believed things could escalate beyond words. So I did what we tell people to do. I called 911. I looked down at my paper, then back up. I am not here asking you to go easy on him. I am also not here asking you to throw him in a cell and forget about him. If jail alone could fix addiction, it would have worked the first time. I am asking for exactly what the prosecutor has recommended: long-term residential treatment with structure, accountability, and consequences if he fails to follow through. And I am asking for a no-contact order during that time because I need to feel safe in my own home while he does that work. My voice wobbled only once on the word safe. I pushed through. I love my son, and I made sure I was turned just enough that in my peripheral vision I could see him, but I will not protect him from the truth anymore. He is an addict, he is manipulative when he drinks, and without serious intervention, he will either kill himself or someone else. I can't live with that on my conscience. I folded my paper, hands steadier now. That's all, Your Honor, I said. The judge nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Please have a seat. My knees almost buckled with relief when I sat down. The judge turned to Tyler.
Mr. Miller, he said, do you have anything you'd like to say before I pass sentence? Tyler cleared his throat. For a second, I thought he might actually stay silent. That would be a first. Then he spoke. I don't think it was as bad as she's making it sound, he said, eyes flicking toward me, then away. I mean, yeah, I was drunk, but I wasn't going to hurt her. It was just an argument. Families fight. My stomach tightened. I watched the prosecutor's jaw clench. The judge looked at him for a long, quiet moment. Your mother just stood up in open court and described being afraid in her own home, he said. And your response is to tell me she's exaggerating? Tyler opened his mouth, then shut it again. That, the judge continued, is exactly the kind of minimization that shows me you have not fully grasped the seriousness of your situation. He shuffled his papers, then read from the PSI. You have 2 prior convictions for operating while intoxicated. You have failed to complete recommended treatment in the past. You have been given probation, fines, and short jail stays. None of these have deterred you. He set the file down. Here is what's going to happen, he said, voice crisp. On the charge of intimidation, a Class A misdemeanor, I am sentencing you to 365 days in the county jail. That sentence will be suspended on the condition that you successfully complete up to 12 months in the county's residential substance abuse rehabilitation program, followed by 1 year of supervised probation. During that time, you will have no contact, direct or indirect, with the victim without her explicit written consent and your probation officer's approval. Tyler's eyes widened. A year? He blurted. In rehab? The judge raised his eyebrows. Would you prefer the year in jail instead? Tyler swallowed. No, Your Honor. I didn't think so, the judge said dryly. You will obey all rules of the program. If you leave against medical advice, are discharged for noncompliance, or fail to complete the program as directed, I will impose the suspended jail sentence. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. One more thing, the judge said. Your mother advocated for this. Not to punish you, but to give you a shot at something other than an early grave. I suggest you keep that in mind during the next year, instead of focusing on how unfair you think this is. He banged his gavel. Court is adjourned. And that was that. They led Tyler out.
not back to the county jail this time, but to a holding area where, I later learned, they'd keep him until there was a bed open at the rehab facility. He looked back over his shoulder once. I couldn't read his face anymore. I didn't wave. The rehab center wasn't some fancy place in the woods with yoga and juice cleanses. This was county-funded, bare bones, designed for people who ended up there because a judge gave them an ultimatum. From what the brochure said, Monique mailed me a copy, it was structured like a very strict dorm run by drill sergeants and social workers. No phones, no outside calls except scheduled ones, and only to approved numbers. Group therapy every day, chores, classes, 12-step meetings, curfews enforced. I didn't put my phone number on his approved list at first. What I did do was clean my house. Not the surface cleaning I'd been doing, the somebody might come in and investigate my life cleaning. I boxed up the last of his clothes from the bedroom and left them with his friend who'd texted once to ask, "Bro, what happened to Ty?" I didn't respond to him either, except with, "He's safe, he's getting help, his things are on the porch." I had the locks changed. The locksmith didn't ask why. He's seen it before, I'm sure. I bought a small motion-activated camera and installed it over the front door, partly so I'd feel safer, partly so if he ever did violate the no-contact order once he was out, I'd have proof. I moved the lockbox to a different spot in the house. Not because I thought he'd get to it from rehab, obviously, but because my brain needed to feel like I wasn't repeating the same pattern. Then I took the Ziploc bag with the broken tape and did something I'd been avoiding. I took it to a local camera shop. The guy behind the counter was about my age, with reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "Can you do anything with this?" I asked, feeling foolish. He untangled the mess gently, like it was a bird with a broken wing. Normally I'd say no, he said. "This housing is shot."
He really stomped the hell out of it, huh? He did, I said. "But," he went on, turning the reels over in his hands, "if the magnetic tape itself isn't too wrinkled, we might be able to salvage a little bit. Maybe not the whole thing, maybe just a few minutes. It'd be pricey, and no guarantees." "How pricey?" I asked. He told me. I winced. It wasn't impossible, but it was a lot for someone on my income. "You don't have to decide now," he said kindly. "You can leave it or take it home and think about it." I looked down at the gnarled, shiny strips in his hands. "That tape is all I had left of my wedding," I said. "He broke it in front of me. Now he's in court-ordered rehab." The man blinked. "Ah," he said. "One of those sons." "One of those sons," I agreed. He nodded slowly. "I'll tell you what," he said. "We've got an old machine in the back that we use for practice. I'll see what I can do with this on my own time. If I can get anything off it, I'll call you. No promises, and if it works, you just pay me what you can." I stared at him. "Why would you do that?" I asked. He shrugged. "I got one of those sons too," he said. I left the tape. I didn't count on it working, but walking out of there felt like sliding a splinter out of my heart. 3 months into Tyler's rehab sentence, I got a letter. Not from him, but from the program. "Dear Miss Miller," it said, "we are writing to inform you that your son Tyler Miller has been admitted to our residential treatment program as of date. He will be participating in an intensive schedule of therapy, education, and recovery activities. Family involvement can be an important part of recovery. However, given the no-contact order in place, we will not be initiating family sessions at this time without court approval." It went on about rules and policies and what would happen after completion. At the bottom, handwritten, "If you ever wish to provide input about your son's history to our clinical team, you may call this number." I put the letter in his folder. I did not call. Not yet. Another month went by. Then another. In that time, I learned what it is to actually live alone. Not alone, but braced for the sound of your adult child stumbling through the door at all hours. I came home from work, and the house was exactly as I'd left it. Dishes stayed washed. Food in the fridge was where I put it. If there was noise at night, it was the TV or the wind,
not my son crashing into something. I slept. I read books. I started going for short walks after dinner, around the block, nodding at neighbors I'd been too exhausted to really talk to for years. I told a few people the basics. My son's in court-ordered rehab, I said when they asked how he was. It was that or jail. Most people did the little sympathetic head tilt. Oh, wow. Well, good for him. That's good. They didn't know where to file it, so they filed it under good news. I let them. Around month 6, a letter came with his handwriting on it, but a different return address. The rehab facility, not the jail. I almost didn't open it. Curiosity won. Mom, it began. The tone was different this time. Less demanding, less blaming. Quieter. He wrote about the routine, how he hated getting up at 6 a.m., how they made them clean the bathrooms with toothbrushes if they mouthed off to staff. He wrote about group sessions and how he thought they were a load of crap, but then admitted in a half sentence that hearing other guys' stories made him feel less singled out by the universe. He wrote, "My counselor says I've got resentment issues with you. I told him you turned your back on me. He asked what you'd done before that. I didn't have a great answer." That line sat in my chest for a long time. He ended with, "I still think the whole tape thing was overblown, but I get now that it wasn't about the tape. You scared me. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. I'm not ready to say more than that yet, but I'm writing instead of calling because they make us think before we put stuff on paper. So that's something, I guess." It wasn't an apology parade. He didn't suddenly see the light and fall to his knees in gratitude that I'd saved him, but it was something. I set the letter on the table and stared at it for a long time. Then I pulled out a pen. "Tyler, thank you for your letter. I'm glad you're safe and clean. I'm glad you have a counselor. I believe you can get sober if you choose to keep doing the work. I accept your apology for scaring me. It matters. You're right. It was not just about the tape. It was about years of things, and the tape was just the first time I refused to swallow it. I am open to more communication as long as it stays honest and non-blaming. I will not argue about the past. I will not accept responsibility for your drinking."
Keep working your program, Mom. I mailed that one. At month 9, the camera shop called. "Ms. Miller? This is Dave from Who's Your Photo," the man said. My stomach flipped. "Yes?" "So," he said, "I've got good news and not great news. The not great news, there was no way to salvage the whole tape. Too much physical damage. Sections were creased beyond repair. The good news, I got about 4 minutes." 4 minutes? I repeated, voice thin. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "About 2 minutes from the beginning and maybe 2 out of the middle. No guarantees on quality, this is VHS from '99, but you can see faces, hear voices. I transferred it to a digital file and put it on a USB drive for you, whenever you want to pick it up." I almost cried right there on the phone with a stranger. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you so much." When I went to pick it up, he slid the little USB drive across the counter like it was a diamond ring. "We'll call it $50, he said. "And before you argue, that's non-negotiable." I paid him and drove home with the drive in my pocket, my fingers closing around it like a lucky charm at every red light. It took me an hour to work up the courage to plug it into my laptop. The video opened full screen. There I was, 20-something years younger, in an off-the-rack white dress that didn't fit quite right in the shoulders, standing at the front of a little church with fake flowers on the altar. There was Mark, in his too big suit, eyes crinkling as he said, "I, Mark, take you, Pam." His voice sounded exactly the way I remembered it. A little rough, a little nervous, warm as a hug. I watched us laugh when the pastor mispronounced my middle name. I watched Mark's hands shake as he slid the ring onto my finger. In the middle clip, we were outside, at the reception in the church hall. Someone had tied balled-up napkins under our car's bumper. Someone else had taped a "Just Married" sign so crooked it looked like a drunk did it. Tyler, 12 years old, skinny as a rail, stood next to Mark in his bill-fitting dress shirt, looking like he wanted to melt into the ground. Mark ruffled his hair. Tyler pretended to hate it and smiled. 4 minutes. That's all I got. It was enough. I watched it 3 times, tears running down my face,
then closed my laptop and held the little USB drive to my chest. "You didn't kill him," I whispered to the empty room. "You didn't erase him." Tyler had thought that breaking the tape would give him power over my grief. Instead, it had just underlined the place where his sickness stopped and my life began. Near the end of the year, I got another letter from the rehab. This one marked Family Day invitation. "Ms. Miller, your son is approaching completion of his residential program. As part of his transition plan, we will be holding a family session for clients with approved contacts. Given the no-contact order, this can only proceed with court and victim approval." Monique called the next day. "You don't have to do this. The order can stand and he can complete without family sessions. But if you want to come, the judge is willing to temporarily modify the order for the day with supervision." I thought about it for a week. I talked about it in Al-Anon until the other women were probably sick of hearing me say, "I don't know." Finally, one of them, a quiet woman named Leela, said, "Ask yourself this. Will you be more at peace going and seeing whatever is there, or not going and always wondering?" I pictured him walking out of rehab and thinking, she didn't even bother to show up, and using that as fuel for another 5 years. I also pictured showing up and getting sucked right back into his manipulations. I decided to try and do the middle thing. Show up, but stay rooted in my own chair. I told Monique, yes. Family Day was nothing like I had imagined. No big dramatic reunion, no big hugs. Just a drab conference room with folding chairs, a coffee urn in the corner, and a whiteboard with "Welcome Families" written in marker that squeaked. Tyler walked in with a small group of other guys, all in the same facility-issued polos and jeans, no shackles this time. He'd lost weight. His face looked clearer. His eyes, for the first time in a long time, were present. When he saw me, he stopped. "Hi." I said, "Hi." We sat in a circle, clients next to their family members.
A counselor led the session, talking about patterns of enabling and healthy boundaries. If my Al-Anon group was the lab, this was the field study. Halfway through, the counselor said, "Okay, we're going to do something a little uncomfortable. Clients, I want you to turn to your family member and say out loud one thing you're taking responsibility for. Not what they did to you, what you did to them. Family, you're just going to listen. Then, if you want, you can respond with one boundary you're keeping." She looked around. "Who wants to start?" she asked. Tyler's hand surprised me by going up first. He turned his chair to face me more fully. "Mom," he said. His voice was shaky. I'm supposed to say one thing I'm taking responsibility for, but there's like a list, so I'll start with one that got us here." He took a breath. "I broke that tape," he said. "On purpose, to hurt you. I knew what it meant to you. I wanted you to feel like you had nothing left so you'd have to focus on me. That was messed up. I'm sorry. For that and for scaring you." The counselor nodded. "Good," she said. "Now take a breath and let her respond only if she wants to." I swallowed hard. "I accept your apology," I said. "I believe you mean it today. I'm still angry. Both things are true." He nodded, eyes shiny. "And my boundary," I continued, because this was my moment, "is that you will not live with me again. Not after here, not later. I will support your recovery within limits that keep me safe and sane. That means maybe dinner sometimes, maybe phone calls, maybe rides to meetings if I'm available. It does not mean money. It does not mean you slip back into my house and my life the way things were. Those days are over." He blinked like I'd thrown cold water in his face. "Okay," he said, voice quiet. "I mean, it sucks, but I get it." The counselor smiled a little. "That's a healthy response," she said. "Everyone heard that? It sucks, but I get it. That's living with consequences." We did more exercises. We talked about what the next year on probation might look like. On the drive home, I played those words over in my head. It sucks, but I get it. That was the closest thing to maturity I'd heard out of his mouth in a long time. I still checked my doors twice that night, but I slept.
He finished the program at 11 and a half months. I know the exact timing because the court sent me a letter. Defendant has successfully completed residential treatment. Sentence to jail remains suspended. Probation will commence on date. No contact order remains in effect unless modified by the court. A few weeks later, I got a postcard with no return address, just a city one over from mine. Mom, it said, in his handwriting. I'm in a sober living house, got a job at a warehouse again, different one. Trying to do it different this time. My PO says if you want the no contact changed, you have to ask. I'm not asking you to. I just wanted you to know I'm okay. I held that postcard for a long time. Then I put it in his folder. As of right now, me sitting here at my kitchen table, writing this, it's been just over a year since he left rehab. We've seen each other maybe half a dozen times, coffee in public places, once dinner at a diner off the highway. He looks older, in a good way. Less like a sulky teenager in a 34-year-old's body, more like a man who has finally realized no one is coming to hand him a different life. We don't talk about the tape much. Once he brought it up, I still can't believe I did that, he said quietly, stirring his coffee. It's like thinking about someone else. I want to go back in time and punch that guy. I can believe you did it, I said. I watched you. He winced. Yeah. I got 4 minutes back, I added. His head snapped up. What? I told him about the camera shop, about the clerk with one of those sons, about the USB drive. So you still have him? Tyler asked, meaning Mark. Yes, I said. A little bit. Enough. And you didn't tell me to make me feel worse? He said slowly. No, I said. I didn't tell you because that's mine. Because the story of that tape isn't about you. Not anymore. He sat with that for a minute. Fair, he said finally. He paid for my coffee with his own debit card. Driving home, I realized something. The revenge, as it wasn't that my son spent a year in a mandatory rehabilitation center. It wasn't that he has probation and a record and had to start over from scratch. The revenge was that I got my life back. I got quiet nights and clean counters and a bank account that wasn't bleeding out.
I got to remember my second husband without the constant background noise of my son needing bail or rides or excuses. And if Tyler gets anything out of it, if he stays sober one more day than he would have otherwise, that's extra. People hear the story and sometimes they say, I could never do that to my kid. They mean call the cops, press charges, sit in a courtroom and ask a judge to send your child somewhere he doesn't want to go. I used to think I could never do it either. Then my son stood in my kitchen with my past in his hands and snapped it like a twig. And I realized something very simple. He'd been doing something like that to me for years. Piece by piece, promise by broken promise, little crunches of trust and safety under his heel. Calling the cops wasn't me suddenly becoming harsh. It was me finally stepping out of the way and letting all the consequences I'd been cushioning finally land where they belonged. Am I proud that my son did almost a year in a court-ordered rehab? No. Am I relieved? Yes. Do I regret it? Not for a single minute. If he relapses, and I'm not naive, he might, I know now that I can survive that. I know where the phone is, I know how to say, I love you, and I won't do this with you again. I also know that somewhere on a little USB in my desk drawer, there are 4 minutes where my husband's voice is clear as a bell, and my son is still 12, and all 3 of us are standing in the same frame, not yet knowing what's coming. He didn't get to take that from me. He just forced me to fight harder to get it back. So that's my story. My son broke the only copy of my wedding tape. I called the cops. I pressed charges. I worked with the prosecutor. I sat in court and asked for exactly the kind of consequence that would hurt him and help him at the same time. Now he's got sobriety, probation, and a year of rehab under his belt. And me? I've got 4 precious minutes of grainy video
A lock on my door that only I have the key to. A stack of folders that remind me I am not crazy. And a life that finally feels like it belongs to me again. If that's revenge, I can live with it.
My grandmother told me this story. Thanks for watching this video. Bye bye!